Alright, hello. This is Just Vine, and today we're doing disc guidance, where we take a look at our bots and go over how they're made, why they're made, how to approach them and use them. And I'll begin practicing with Ed, since it's been a while since I touched him, and probably need plenty of matchup practice with Bison in particular, given how intense of a matchup it can be. So I'm not going to explain anything as to what the bot's instructions are at first. So right now I'm just going to feel him out a little bit. I'm not even going to try earning points. I'm just going to see how Ed interacts with BisonBot.
Noting for viewers that I am also on stream, and I'll be helping out if anything turns up within the bot that may need to be adjusted, either because of problems it causes to a particular character and makes the learning experience difficult or impossible, or anything that was probably too hard to input consistently. Maybe I'll try to find an easier way to input it and still have the same effect, or maybe the opposite, where the input can be improved, and I notice it by watching through various approaches to the bot. Even as the designer, it is likely that I will tend to approach the bot in very similar ways, no matter which character I'm testing with, so it's usually good for me to get information based on how other people think it should go.
You know, this matchup is a lot less in favor for Bison than I was expecting it to be. The more I think about it, seeing Ed's toolkit against Bison, I think it might actually be more so in Bison's favor. Or Ed's favor, I mean.
I'm actually kind of surprised that you think that, but maybe you can demonstrate to me why you think it's so in a little bit.
Well,
because you must remember, a lot of this has to do with the fact that the bot, while it does spend a decent amount of time blocking, it's not too hard for you to figure out when you need to not hold back anymore, when it's about to do a move and you get to do something. It's easy for you to intercept those, given that it's a bot. So you'd have to explain to me what exactly, in terms of tools, makes you think that is useful.
Well, I was expecting at first that Bison would probably be in favor, or it be even, because honestly Bison's reach and just general ability to make Ed shut up is pretty strong. But if Ed, like, avoids Bison, Bison really can't do much about that. I mean... You can chase with Scissor Kick. There. So that's what I'm currently trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out if V's skill can grab Head Stomp as easily as I think it can. Then that's why I think that it could technically be tough for Bison. But I also am not very good with Ed, so getting the timing for it probably going to be hard.
This is a bot where you're focusing mostly on your defense, because most people don't have a lot of problems against Bison on offense. Just getting your offense started against him is hard. It's the Bison player's job to make sure that they have a lot of useful tricks to apply to their own defense. But mostly I'd say that the purpose of BisonBot is to make you get visually used to fighting him. He has a lot of moves that, while they don't specifically look similar, if you are focusing on things like color changes and so on, you can get messed up a lot, because it's a quicker way to find out whether or not he's doing something, but it's not a very good way to figure out what the something is. The other thing is that despite nearly everything, he's relatively mobile. Even though he has to hold his charges.
Well, regardless, this would be pretty good for, like, learning when Bison is going to, like, go away from a devil reversal or something, or a head stomp.
He's recognizing which mode he's in, I suppose. This is also why they made sure that he doesn't necessarily activate his V-trigger that often relative to most of them. There's a lot of meter watching involved in this particular bot.
Anyway, so the points which I'm gonna start actually trying to keep track of after this is, so the easy mode has all of these points. So the first point you can get is throw punish his scissor kick. We might change that later, but for easy mode it's fine to have that. For the second point, tech his dash up throw, which is good because I totally need more practice on that. The third point is anti-airing his head stomp, skull driver, and devil reverse. Point for anti-airing any of those. Or evade it and somehow and get a punish off it right as he lands or something. The fourth point is punishing his slide with something other than throw. And that's mostly to just get you used to his slide's ranges, because you can make slide basically safe. As a Bison player, I've been able to bait people into trying to punish throw plenty of times. Or not throw, slide plenty of times. So it's not hard to do. It's not hard to know that range, but if you're panicked, if you're not very used to fighting Bison in the first place, it definitely can get you quickly overwhelmed. Because I mean, trying to like sweep punish a safe slide is bad news for you. So the final point that we have for easy mode is Bison uses V-trigger and you last until the end of it, you get a point, basically. Just for him running out of the V-trigger, so okay.
Well, getting hit all you want is generally a bad thing regardless.
Well, yes.
So, with those in mind, let's start counting. 1, 2. That doesn't count.
It's also definitely meant to get you used to Bison ranges and mix-ups. We've put at least a few of the lower level mix-ups you'll find from Bison into it. Especially some movement after particular moves, throws, using long range to keep yourself out. Just generally making your life miserable by never quite knowing where he's going to come from, which tempts most people to preemptively hit buttons. Now, against the bot, that would work in terms of doing damage, but we're aiming to teach you how to beat a Bison player that has figured out your tendencies in terms of mashing buttons, and is just taking advantage of them. While the bot obviously can't do that, you should learn how to defend against him in particular spaces just so that you could face that situation without panicking. Because the more you panic, the more you're likely to hit buttons that just get baited eventually, and then Bison explodes into damage and Bison mode and you die.
1.
The other thing is that Bison actually doesn't run out of re-trigger unless he does moves. So just waiting him out purely is possible because he will eventually obviously do moves. But it's not the best strategy because he can trip you up eventually.
Three, or no, that's 4.
One thing I will definitely agree with about Ed is that he has one of the easiest ways of dealing with head stomp stuff of the cast.
4.
Unfortunately, he could also be baited into doing too many things. Also, I believe you're at 5 and this is turning into a serious endurance battle.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Bison has decided the battle is over.
1. 2. 3. 4.
As always, the difficulty levels increase as you go.
4.
By removing certain things you can get points from.
5.
'Unfortunately for Ed,
6.
he tends to get very little off the ways that he stops Bison from doing that. And it becomes an issue over time. Especially in the early part of the match, there's no real reason for Bison to not just use head stomp stuff.
8.
So if you ever want to raise the difficulty on yourself, beyond probably the highest difficulty level that we have, or a variant of that at least, you should try to make sure that you actually get good damage off of your responses to his head stomp. But a lot of the time, strategically speaking, that is not what your character really wants to do. They don't want to devote a lot of energy to getting really good punishes on something that Bison probably uses for more so mobility. If you ping him and he ends up heading back out, you're probably fine. You'll also notice from before that head stomp itself takes down a relatively smaller amount of Bisons of the trigger to use. This is not actually a matter of the move in itself, but rather that he's sort of coded as far as we can tell. It's probably going to be on the Capcom website when they put that up. It costs him more V gauge to cancel from one special into another than it just to just do specials.
2.
Unfortunately, his flow means he's not one of our bots that we can let be about meaties or anything to help round you out. He basically has to be mostly just matchup stuff, which is why he's so late in our rotation. We didn't try very hard to make this bot early. We had it available, but it probably needed some tweaking. Just in terms of what was released then, he had a lower priority than most of the bots. Unlike like Mika and Nash and to some extent Vega, who basically do a good enough job of, the CPU does a good enough job of mimicking their playstyle, that we are trying to come up with something else that the bot can teach you other than just how to fight this matchup.
Lost track of how many points I had.
As I said, endurance battle, it's kind of hard to keep this up over a long time, and that is what Bison players are often counting on. He's hardish to get in on, and gains a lot from just being at a particular space, so we've tried to get the bot to stand at approximately that space with very little movement, similar to how Abigail bot functions. He also has a wonderful tendency to put you back at that space using his slip.
2. 3. 'Don't know if that counts. 4. 5.
'Fortunately, just grinding on this bot a bit is often enough to help you keep up with online Bison players, at least. And make it less about not being able to handle the character and more about strategy of whatever's going on.
Five. 6. 7. 'Curse you, head stomp.
So you say, but you were entirely the inspiration for how this spot works.
Of course I am.
Part of the reason that neither character has meter of the CA gauge variety in this is because we wanted to make people focus a lot on the meter watching aspect of that. While it is more likely that Bison players will try to stay high on their own trigger bar and will try to save it and not have to do reversals, that's not as interesting or important, because once most higher level Bison players, or even lower level Bison players who are serious about the character, once they go into that mode, it's probably to launch a gigantic combo or to do a particular type of mix-up. So we didn't make it feel as if, okay, you have to learn to deal with this, because most likely if Bison is using this move, he's already canceling into it. Unlike Urian, where even if Urian is canceling into it, Urian has to cancel off something very fast and might not be able to confirm it properly. Bison doesn't use this to like escape stuff or put himself into strange situations. He tends to just use it as a confirm to get extra damage off of it.
Well, I learned something for my play against Ed. Apparently, if I double EX Psycho Inferno, it beats his fee reversal because Bison's a jerk.
A large part of Bison as a character is making your opponent so confused about what's really going on that you get to capitalize on that. So the more experience you have against this character, the flatly better you are at fighting him. It's not a matter of a massive amount of very real mix-ups or similar. It's realizing, oh, things are happening that I know how to stop, and I have enough experience to stop them. He's a frustrating character in that he can deviate very, very slightly from his main plan, usually in slightly unsafe ways, but it doesn't really matter if you're really committed to doing whatever it was you were doing before. He'll catch you, and then it just tends to frustrate a lot of people. Because, as you said, Bison's a jerk.
And I love being a jerk.
If you are interested in overall, but you're thinking that this looks relatively easier than most bots, it fundamentally is. But it has some things that depend on your character. The more is good at dealing with the head stomp, or conversely good at dealing with the dash up throw mix up things. And you just pick whichever one is harder. Keeping up your own defense can be easy enough if you're not too focused on certain things, but you also tend to have to learn a lot about defending against Bison just to do that. Even though it won't necessarily feel like, oh, this is hard to do, he's still mainly teaching you something, even if it's just grind to get used to things. This is part of the reason why we didn't actually give him ES Devil Reverse. Because for nearly every character in the game, the only good response to ES Devil Reverse is nothing. It is the move that gives Bison the most freedom and mobility. He doesn't really have to do anything. And therefore we decided it was probably better to, rather than teach people something with a bot's limited repertoire of this is how you respond, we didn't want to get anyone used to the idea that, oh, ES Devil Reverse works like this because the bot does it that way, so it's left out of the bot entirely. If you want experience against that, you're going to have to either just block like most high level players, or build up specifics against friends. However, we will try to include a variant, because it's not even remotely difficult to make him do ES Devil Reverse, or even various versions of ES Devil Reverse. It's just, do so at your own risk, because building muscle memory around that move might not be in your favor.
I'm amused that even with, if you're focusing on defense, I am amused that even without pushing that many buttons, because of the spacings Bison is at, and because I know those spacings really well, I basically feel boxed in like I would against an actual Bison. Because a lot of Bison spacing is dependent on what special he just hit you with. whether on block or on hit, because it's sort of like, at least in my own experience, it sort of evens things out a little bit. So even if you are slightly further away, you can sort of rely... And Bison's buttons are just so long to begin with. So he puts you in ranges fairly frequently because the way he moves around on the battlefield to begin with is with his specials. So...
And of course his incredible standing medium kick, which is not a movement tool, but rather a tool to stop you from moving while Bison moves to wherever he feels like.
One.
I also spent a lot of time making sure that he could do things like that triple Inferno back-to-back, because that's what I was referring to before about breaking expectations. Bison has a very strong ability to break expectations, because people will go, okay, he did this move, now he can't be charging, so it's my turn. But it's not really your turn if he decides to just randomly do a different special, or sometimes just randomly hit a strange button. The Bison player, on the other hand, has learned, oh, well, if I do that from here, I'm still safe. No one can really do much about it. In fact, the only characters who are really strongly able to deal with Bison when he does that are Cammy and Curry. Cammy by far more so than Curry. Because at least with Curry and stuff, he knows how to get out of the way. You can even backdash, or there's some strange situations if you know the timing really well where you can forward dash through her entire move. Cammy has a lot of hitbox on some of her normals and a lot of hitbox on particular specials that make it so that even if Bison gets out of the way, he's not usually at a much advantage, and he normally doesn't get out of the way. It's looking like Ed could be that sort of character as well, because there's no real way for a Bison player to know which of Ed's 2V skills he's actually charging up. And I'm pretty sure that depending on the spacing, it will grab Bison out of Scissor Kick. The bigger problem is that Bison can easily change the spacing he stays at so that this becomes less effective for him. And since he's one of the few characters who, with enough meter at least, can attack you from basically the other side of the screen, it doesn't really come up too much. However, he can't really throw out buttons against Ed's V-skill as a method of deterrent, because one, that never works on Ed's V-skill, but more importantly, the idea of hitting buttons in case something else happens is difficult, because Bison will get clipped by it. So if you miss any execution, for example, he often ends up in problems.
One thing I have been noting, and that you'll probably figure out fairly quickly, is that if you try to stand at a range where you can do something about his head stomp and double reverse, you're standing at the range perfect for Bison to slide at. And therefore can't get the point off that. So it's sort of a trade-off. But if your character has a better advantage against his head stomp or against his slide, knowing where to stand is sort of the point of the
It's
bot. I
actually
mean,
hyper important. Yes, it's actually hyper important to recognize my character needs to fight Bison by standing here. Because while he's an extremely non-linear character, the good ideas for Bison are limited by where he happens to be on the screen. There's good ideas and crazy ideas. And if you can force a Bison player to use too many crazy ideas, you'll eventually get them. Another reason why I also made sure that the bot is at least capable of feigning extreme patience. It's much less likely to do that than most things, but it does have those occasional moments where it just doesn't do much. One specific thing that we made sure to do though is to make it so that his slide itself has a tell. If you are defending, especially if you're not moving, because obviously if you were moving, you would have to manage to crouch blocking time. If you were just defending, he will do a particular set of things directly before he slides almost every time. How many of them he does can be misleading, but he does at least telegraph the fact that he's going to slide most of the time. Which means that you get a little bit of time to recognize where he was standing relative to you before he did the sliding, and work on figuring out how to deal with that distance. He does have the capacity to just slide raw though. When he comes, it's basically between a very specific thing.
anyway, so we thought we'd do something slightly different from usual and actually practice more than just one character. AK, I'm bored getting beat up by Bison. So I'm going to use another character I haven't touched in a little while, but a lot more recently than Ed. So. And I'm guessing on Jury the problem is going to be very similar.
I would say the bigger problem against BisonBot with Jury is that he will tend to either not to be where you need him to be, period, because he doesn't stay still quite long enough, or he will actually be defending. There's no specific way to use Jury's style of moves to pick up on where Bison is going to be and therefore what should be done, because there's a lot of time spent in Jury's moveset.
Oh, I didn't know that canceled. One.
Fortunately, overall offense once Jury gets started is relatively easier.
Oh right, they took out that meaty. I forgot. Right? Not playing Ed. Two. Three.
You can also use it for advanced defensive skills. This is probably one of the most useful things that this bot has available to it. Every other bot is either random enough and more focused on testing your reactions, or altogether different in its aim, because it gives you like some aim of offense or something. This is one of our few bots where you do have to deal with high-low, technically left-right, depending on whether or not he's in featuring or not, and throw strike mix-ups all in one bot. But the useful thing about that is that if you have any advanced techniques that are meant to not quite option select, but to cover those sort of mix-ups based primarily on your own timing, then you can test them on a bot, which means that you'll be much more capable of dealing with it, not necessarily online, because lag might be a problem there. But if you're playing against friends or going to tournaments or similar, it would also help you to understand if you can do something consistently in the first place, so that if you do end up online and you realize, hey, this defense that I normally use is not working, you won't be stuck in the feeling that the defense itself is incorrect or doesn't work at all, because you would have found someone, or in this case something, to practice against that will let you know, yes, I can probably do this with some consistency. It's the lag, or it is the opponent's timing being different, or something like that, rather than my own execution failure or inability to do something.
Ha! Three. Four.
This bot can actually also be fought with his meter at full, but it's probably better to do that once you have gotten very used to his flow as it is now, and basically adapted into it, because then you won't have to worry about as much things. If you've reached a point where you can handle all scissor kicks, for example, then you can turn on the meter and learn to deal with what he's like when he has basically only heavy and EX scissors, and you have to deal with the EX scissors more often. His other moves, it probably helps if he doesn't constantly do EX Inferno, but most of us aren't punishing that either. It depends a lot on your character whether or not it's worth leaving the TA gauge off or on to avoid the Inferno. But he's a bit adaptable in terms of goals based on whether or not you turn on the meter or not. It's just suggested that you play with him with the meter off at first until you can reasonably consistently handle at least his normal mode. And then if you either don't feel like going directly into his harder mode, or just have more interest in dealing with his plus moves and similar, then you can turn on the meter and see what happens. However, we didn't make a lot of effort to give him his light kick or any tendencies to hit buttons after his safer moves. So it might not be the best idea overall. Because most likely, after he has Scissor Kick, for example, Bison can at least try to hit you, but we haven't actually made any implementation of that, and at the moment there's no plan to. It's a little bit hard to get any property in terms of when exactly it would be the right thing to hit. It's not that it can't be done, and we will probably put some note or variant so that you can definitely try it. But
I'm going to count that as a point.
Learning and doing the precise timing for that light kick can be really difficult. One of the more important things we definitely put in, however, was his medium kick, standing medium kick into slide, which is a form of high-low mix-up. Especially since in the current iteration he won't actually always slide. He tends to. Especially if he does the kicks in neutral, because that is actually the recording. But if he actually clips you with the medium kick, different things can happen. And you might find yourself crouch blocking, expecting to be slid at, and he might catch you off guard if your reactions aren't so good. Or if he's in a different mode, that is.
Oof. Well, this will help me a lot on jury. Because, for one thing, he punishes a lot of her bad habits that I have. And the other thing that it does is there's a lot of good habits I can learn from it. So, like, it's mostly spacing stuff, so it's kind of difficult to explain, but if you have bad habits on jury, I'm pretty sure BisonBot could beat them out of you. But, like, not hitting heavy kick in neutral, for example, when it's at a certain spacing.
My heaviest interest in this when it comes to the Armika matchup is exactly what she can do against his head snaps. Because I know she has options, but seem to be, similar to Curry, reliant on where Bison is on the screen, even more so than when you fight Vega. Because at least with Vega, you can be reasonably sure that Wingless is going to handle most of it. But I feel as if Mika's bigger problem against Bison is knowing when to try to punish things. Especially when to try to punish things are technically lifts.
And I mean, to be fair, that's like half of Armika's technicalness to begin with. Oh, I bet EX Wingless could have beat that.
And that is another reason why meter watching is so important. And why the player should nearly never give themselves meter for this matchup, because it would make it relatively easy to respond to certain things with some EX version of some move, depending on what your character does. But it's very important to do that, and you'll notice if you watch carefully that he is not a bot that lets you build meter easily randomly. I mean, you can try putting a lot of pressure on him to get your own meter up, but compared to most bots, who spend a lot of time moving at you and their moves tend to be vulnerable, Bison has a higher tendency to not do that. You'd have to build meter just by throwing him constantly, which, while effective, becomes pretty clear that you're not really learning much. Plus, if you do try to like dash in or jump in and throw him, weird things can happen. So the challenge is to build up enough meter to use your EX moves that help you deal with headstand and so on. Characters whose V reversals move multiple way are at advantage with this bot. They might want to consider also lowering the V meter available. But most everyone else, because the way Bison moves doesn't really lend itself to you doing a lot of V reversals on his basic attacks and getting anything off him anyway, it's usually fine to leave that bar as is so you do get as much practice as you need in that particular regard.
I think I'm at 5.
Looks like it. Internally that one made 6, so yes.
Ah.
Another thing he teaches quite slightly is the with punish of a throw that you are expecting. Our recently released Urian bot has an extremely difficult with punish as part of his actual 4-point system. But it's only extremely difficult if you are not predicting a certain set of things. Both Bison and Urian, therefore, have moves that lead into it so that you can know it's coming, and therefore can whiff punish correctly. Although in Bison's case, it's really just a dash up. If you happen to not be in range to actually get thrown, and you can mentally distinguish this range, then you get to hit a button. And often you get to hit a fairly good button. Now the argument could be that you're responding to the dash instead of the throw, but you will understand quickly if you've faced off with Bison a lot and been dash thrown with his good throw range, why that's not always a good plan, because many characters move their throw box at least slightly forward in the startup frames of the move, and Bison will tend to grab them out of those. It's often better to wait until he has done so and then try to hit him.
I wonder if I could headbutt that. Yep. Yep. So I know what I'm doing from now on. There's probably ranges it's better to do
I find it
wingless,
interesting
but
that it works on the Devil Reverse, but not specifically on anything else. But I presume if it worked on Headstone, that would be bad. Interestingly though, if you time it just right, because I think that's what you just did, if you time it just right, you can make the head stomp itself miss. Probably if he's far away, and then does a head stomp to try to do that, it will make the head stomp miss entirely. There are many characters who actually have this ability, but they tend to only have it when Bison has done a full screen or nearly full screen head stomp. It might be that it has to be 3/4 screen and specifically not full screen. I don't remember offhand at the moment. But depending on your character and how you understand the game, you can in fact just dodge head stomp with certain moves. Bison players are usually quite aware of this fact and know how to manipulate it, usually since the person they're facing doesn't actually expect that to happen. So Bison is the one who ends up at advantage and gets to take them off guard.
3 because reasons. I think we're counting that as 4.
If you can do it intentionally, it probably counts as 4. If you can do it often enough on pure luck, it probably still counts as a 4. Generally, when you don't count the point is when you didn't intend to do the thing that happened. And, of course, don't feel confident that you could reproduce it even if you then wanted to do it on purpose. Interestingly, his Devil Reverse while in V-Trigger is not truly a left-right mix-up. It's more so one because people move. He will actually always go behind you. It's just really, really hard to get yourself to recognize exactly what that means when your opponent is no longer on the screen at all.
No!
And since the only way to stay completely quiet is to crouch block and open yourself up to the head stomp, it is a fairly advanced physical trick to do it such that you cannot get hit by either of them. It does exist, but I leave that as an exercise to your Smash user.
One. Damn it. Wrong one. And that's exactly why that crouch heavy punch is there. Because Bison can totally just stop you from jumping back out of his territory. Yep, the dash throw is gonna kill me every time. Why did that not go off? Just bad button
Well,
hitting,
we all
I guess.
suffer from your dash throws.
One. Damn it, I hate when that happens. 2. See, it happened again. That's how I'm gonna beat the dash throw. I'm just not gonna deal with it until I can get better. Totally valid strategy. 4, 5, 6.
There's actually a related advanced thing based on if you do have a particularly good vision on
7.
him out of the air, you can use it to get some advantage on the ground since he doesn't have a lot of really quick moves and very few, if any, invincible ones. Basically, if Bison has anything invincible, you also probably didn't anti-air him out of the head stomp because he probably was using something else. But understanding his properties in V-Trigger allow you to figure out all of those things as well. Because he's able to make many people very confused based on the various versions of
8.
pretty much everything that he actually has.
9. Actually, I'm technically at 10 because I didn't count the survival point, but let's not. Ten.
You'll often notice that once you focus in on one of your familiar characters, it's much easier to get the points. But this is also true in this case because it is literally a Bison player, and their other character, again, Bison. It's quite possible that this is much harder than it looks.
12.
As you know, you do end up reducing the amount of points you get for doing any particular thing as you go up in difficulty. There's usually a specific one that is removed entirely. Fortunately, in this case, RBK is actually so good at dealing with Bison stuff that she really does not deal with the scissor kick as well as she technically deals with other things. Although, of course, she can command zero punish it and do a lot of damage.
Yep.
So while no one can call this matchup particularly bad in either character's favor, they definitely have a lot of tools to deal with each other rather than a mishmash of clashing tools.
Alright. Let's go to one last character here. And the Bison matchup is legitimately hard, so I technically need practice on this.
Yes, I was just about to say that those of you who have not suffered through the Bison mirror and figure, well, I play Bison, so I'm probably okay. This is not true. This is not remotely true in any way. And probably you, more so than anyone else, need help from dealing with this because the BisonBot wants to stand where you also want to stand. And this is probably the purest version of rock, paper, scissors in Street Fighter. Because Bison has practically no anti-Bison tools.
And Bison is my best character. Just for the record, and I'm getting absolutely destroyed. So
Your main benefit in this matchup is understanding what different people having different amount of meters means. So meter watching is even more important to this one. In fact, I would definitely suggest that if you are playing this on the Bison mirror that you definitely not put either your or the bot's gauge up, because conserving meter, understanding your situation at any given time, view reversaling if you have to, all of those things are critically important to getting some edge over an opposing Bison in your match. Higher level players in general don't like fighting in a mirror match unless they have to or are particularly chummy or good at their characters. Or extreme character specialists who just like proving that they're completely better at their character than someone else. But I think most people even avoid this one. Thankfully for them, it doesn't come up a whole time.
yeah, who would it be? Pinoy and Tampa Bison, and I can't think of anybody else who would willingly do it. Not even Tampa. I don't think Tampa Bison would even put up with a Bison mirror match if he didn't have to.
Well, we can probably meet them one day and ask them directly.
Oh, are they at China?
I know Pinoy would try.
Yeah, Pinoy definitely would.
But I expect nearly everyone else to switch. Which is an interesting way to look at it, because that technically makes Pinoy the Bison.
Pinoy is the Bison. I thought we'd like decided this.
But yes, mirror matches are not something that most people will play. Cami players will sometimes do it, but it tends to frustrate them. Ken players will occasionally do it because Ken has enough options. It's similar to the Bison matchup where they know what happens when they have different amounts of meter, and they just play around it that way. And of course, I'm pretty sure that Sako and Takedo will play up against each other if that ever comes up.
No, you don't think that Sako would pull out Chun-Li for that?
It would be asking a lot of himself.
Oh, I bet I know what I could do. I bet I could scissor kick after I block his head stomp. So I'll try that, since I literally have no other ideas.
But yeah, we know that Sako doesn't hate the Akuma Mirror. He played it at near the end of Evo, I believe. I don't remember watching any tournament with Sako recently, so it probably was. That was actually really, really intense. I think he actually enjoyed that. And we know Takedo's not gonna like switch character just to fight Sako. That would be less than epic. And against his newly stated goals.
One. Ah, stupid head stomp.
One thing that we will mention in the page, and is super important to realize, is that I haven't been exaggerating when I've mentioned it. You have to understand the properties of head stomp change at least slightly depending on where Bison does it from on the screen relative to your character. And without the understanding of that, you may end up getting completely confused because you'll end up thinking, nothing I do against this move is reliable. But you really have to consider that there are at least two, if not three different things that the less fortunate characters have to do. Because Alex, for example, has to know 3 different responses to head stomp.
Did you just call? Okay, I appreciate that.
I think that's the best way to actually describe characters in this game, just as a personal thing. I don't really think of most characters as low tier, because having grown up understanding what bad matchup really means, low tier, no one in this game feels low tier in that regard. I've never felt that a matchup was worse than like six slight, 3 little bit. I've never really felt, okay, I have no idea what to do, period. I have felt my opponent has an advantage and now I can't take it away from them, but that's not really the same thing. So the general feeling I have toward characters is that they're more so unfortunate in that they're lacking something, or once they lose a particular type of momentum, they can't function as well. Actually, I'd say that's the bigger issue. It's not so much that having momentum is absolutely required, but rather that when certain characters lose their momentum, it becomes the other person's turn. Whereas in most games, or even in this game, honestly, with most characters, let's not front about the balance of the game. For most characters, when you lose momentum, your opponent didn't gain any. You're just probably trying to fight back in neutral, and your character might not be as good at neutral. But there are a few characters who are unfortunate enough that if they lose momentum, it automatically means that their opponent gets it. And that is a big problem for Alex versus Bison in particular. Alex's range does not help him sufficiently against Bison. And most of the time, Head Crush versus Air Stampede on Bison, it's not really a good choice to be having to make regardless of anything else. Alex gets cut down heavily in terms of which buttons are useful to him. But unlike Colleen and Cammy, where Alex switching to not using specials is actually gaining the advantage in the matchup, Alex switching to not using specials against Bison is basically barely making it even. But yes, back to the original point, you have to understand the difference in ranges that Head Stomp can have, and for some characters that greatly limits what you can do. For the other characters, it has a different interesting thing. Especially if you have a good air-to-air versus it, you have to be careful because if you are in the corner, your air-to-air versus Bison's Head Stomp, no matter where he is, tends to change at least slightly. So, for some characters it's distance, and for some characters it's their own positioning on the screen. So even while it might sometimes be a good thing to be in the corner, especially if Bison goes into V-trigger, you can just... Often you can in fact keep most of your troubles at bay by going into the corner and defending well there. Running away from him while he's in V-trigger is usually a terrible plan. But the Head Stomp that has been defeated by you on every time he's tried it for the entire round might now become difficult to deal with. Especially since the trigger version is different.
Oh man.
So as a quick final demonstration, I'll request that Just Fine actually do turn on the bot's CA gauge, just to give a basic idea of what happens when you do it, why you should or should not do it, and his general capability with it on. I'll note that unlike some bots where giving them infinite V timer actually makes it more bearable to learn things quickly. This is not one of those bots in general. You can try it out, but I strongly suggest it. So you'll see that one of the first things that changes is his rhythm changes, because he then tends to spend more time in Inferno animation, which changes what actually happens to a lot of the flight. So it doesn't specifically make him stronger, unless you are bad at dealing with his EX headstone. And we did make sure that he had certain times and spaces where he's not doing the ES version of the move, so that it's not a constant barrage of ES even when you do turn on into it.
I think I'll take that trade.
It is also, now that you mention it, an interesting thing to learn whether or not you can do certain moves against him purely because the trade is in your favor and it's likely to trade. This does not apply to all characters. You have to work this out by fighting him, which is, again, up higher levels and you want to get used to the matchup, but just haven't had an opportunity before. This bot is one of those bots that is useful to people who are not specifically in bronze tier or feel like they are around the skill level of bronze tier, because if you don't have a lot of Bison matchup experience, you can use this bot to quickly get some. Probably enough that you would be able to get the rest by fighting other people without having to worry about it becoming a terrible beatdown, or having to rely too much on your own character's damage. This bot does not have any cool cycle pressure tricks. You're gonna have to learn those from professionals.
9. 10. So a little easier on CA gauge mode for me, but 11,
Yes.
12.
If you don't play a very jumpy character, it's more likely that it'll be easier because the EX scissor kick is mostly there to stop people from doing much when they're moving. So he does do it fairly often, but again, the changes in his rhythm mean that he's slightly less likely to do it in particular timings when it would trick most people. If you're not very twitchy, even if you have good defense like Justfine does, he won't specifically be harder in the mode where the CA gauge is on. But he's not specifically easier by much either. It's just that you get used to taking damage and then that being it, because the thing that tends to hit you is the EX head stomp. And that's just, I'm down, now I have to get used to it again. Giving him infinite V gauge, on the other hand, means that basically he's constantly in that teleport dash mode, which is probably not a good thing to practice against for longer periods. The properties of that dash change in ways that would surprise you, and let you feel as if you can't take advantage of certain things that can 100% be taken advantage of. And if the Bison player realizes that, oh, they don't hit a button here because they think that I can get away from it, then they'll put more pressure on you than they should be allowed to, and you're gonna have to worry about it then. But as you can see, his V trigger timer goes down so slowly that if you decide to just, well, okay, one of the points you mentioned is to survive his V-trigger. No problem, I'll just beat him up for the entire time that he has it. It will technically work because he doesn't really get out of middies that well, but you would have to be doing it for quite a long time. And depending on your method of doing it, it could be a little difficult. We did not make any serious effort to give him his view reversal. This may change between now and Sunday's release, but at the moment there is no direct plan to do it because it would make the bot's inputs extremely non-lenient in a certain particular way and lead to him doing stand heavy punch at times when we might not want that to happen. So I'm not so sure about it at the moment. But don't be surprised if the final version is in fact able to be universal.
Fucking B trigger. So salty. Well, it's a good thing to learn how I probably make other people feel sometimes. If only so I can use it against them.
It is notable that with the CA gauge active, he does obviously become more dangerous in the V-Trigger because he has more chain ability on the moves, but it's not usually so much so that you need to care.
Ooh, that trade, huh? Alright. I'll take that trade too. Tricky timing, though.
I think it actually only trades with the EXV trigger version, which is probably not as helpful.
Yeah, perhaps so.
I could see it being like the awareness in a match to do it when your opponent is low on life and going for the Hail Mary, but that is asking a lot of yourself, I think.
Damn it.
We don't have any plans at the moment to remove how hoppy he can be, because that is actually part of a Bison strategy. It's not a very high level one, but it is useful enough to learn to deal with it. The character basically can mix up between head stomps and jumps in ways that make him willing to do certain things that are not necessarily good ideas when he's only jumping. So even though this leaves him fairly open, since you don't get any points for anti-airing or anything like that, and you don't benefit too much from like popping him and keeping him on the ground a lot, we decided to leave that in there just so you can force yourself to deal with it mentally.
I think that's 5. Six. Seven. Oh, right, he was in future.
If nothing else, he's also a fairly cathartic bot to just beat up on.
8. 9. 10 if I was doing easy mode. So, yay! Anyway, I think that's enough getting beat up by my former self. So, anyway, hope that helps you figure out how to use BisonBot to your advantage. Well, DictatorBot. We're calling him DictatorBot. So, he should be out by Sunday as usual. You can check out him and our other bots at 2-mk.org/bots. And as always, if you have any ideas for tweaks to the bot or whatever before release, or even variations to post that you think would be useful to others, go ahead, give us a ring at our contact page on 2-mk.org. So, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the show. See you on Monday. Enjoy Shine and Hong Kong and all that other fun stuff during the weekend. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.